All right. Theo, thanks for joining. Good afternoon. So for everyone, my name is Joe Contact. I'm a director in the finance and operations service line here at Spaulding Ridge. Been a supply chain practitioner for the last 10 years or so in the CPG, food and bev, and chemical space. And with me, we have Theo Pelkert. He's an Anaplan guru who's helped a lot on our finance side and more recently on the supply chain side, specifically with this allocation tool that we want to talk through. So Theo, thanks for joining. And why we're here today, there's a ton of discussion around supply chain resiliency and what makes a more resilient supply chain. It's very broad and it's very difficult to narrow down and understand what the primary drivers for those can be. In our case, we recently built a solution that we think helps with that directly. And for us, this is specifically around critical component shortages and visibility associated with that as well. We think that a lot of MRP solutions, some ERP solutions, there are pretty significant gaps, whether it's a legacy solution or whether it's even a recently transitioned cloud solution as well, where whether it's because of the complexity of your processes or changes since the actual implementation itself, that the specifics around raw material allocation don't really keep up with the changing business processes, and it ends up driving a bunch of offline, either native knowledge need or offline spreadsheet work to understand and go through that allocation or raw material pegging process to peg which specific raw materials need to be allocated to which specific finished goods. And the solution that we've built leverages both Anaplan and Snowflake, or another data platform allocation engine, Anaplan from a visibility, planning horsepower, workflow standpoint, and then utilizing Snowflake to actually do the complex allocation, learn and build from past experience off that as well, and end up with a pretty intelligent and useful solution. So ultimate outcome on our end, we want to be able to increase top line, both with customer retention, making sure that whatever we're committing to, we're actually hitting those order fulfillment dates, along with quicker revenue realization. So if we know something's going to be short ahead of time, we're more accurately able to reflect those customer orders and, again, hit them versus just continuing to move them out. The other aspect is trying to lower the bottom line from a working capital standpoint and make sure that for the raw materials that we do have, we're using those as efficiently as possible and allocating them to the best of our abilities. So with that, let's jump into Anaplan to the demo. I'll kick things off and we'll go from there. Great, thanks, Theo. And so what you can see is a landing page, pretty common landing page that we'd have in Anaplan. I'm not going to go into all of the background details from an Anaplan standpoint. There's a lot of other content on that we can be able to show, but a couple quick highlights. On the top right-hand side, generally we'll have some exception management and some alert highlighting in terms of potential focus areas that we want to be able to focus on. And then we'll have subcategories down below that Theo will walk through with regards to the more detailed action-oriented planner pages that they would be using to drive the improvement that we just talked about. And so with that, I think, Theo, let's just jump in.
Yep. Thanks, Joe. So I'll go right into our risk summary here, and this will give us a little overview of everything we're going to talk through today. So to preface it a little bit, we're going to dive into some of the analytics and the diagnostics of our current state, some of the components that are driving warnings and shortages throughout our entire time scale, and how to assess those and come up with long-term solutions. And then finally, we'll go into some scenario comparison that you see over here on the right, really leveraging the power that's in that allocation behind the scenes. And that will provide us some insight on what we can do in the short term to really react to the problems that we're facing right now. So the first place that we will go is into our product family alerts. We're able to see a breakdown of some of our risked revenue, some of our orders that are at risk, broken out by our product families. So the first thing that you'll see here at the top of the screen is again, some of those KPIs and those warnings that we saw on the previous pages. How many total components are resulting in an order being at risk? How many total orders do we have at risk? What is the total revenue that we might not be able to actually realize given our shortages? So on this page, what we want to do is we want to zoom in a little bit onto our most at-risk orders. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip down to any orders that are below 70% ready. So as I do that,
And
you'll
a
see some
quick
of
call out
these.
with that
Please.
reduction to what we see as maybe a below 70% clear to build. It may not seem as significant if you have 40 or 50 warnings, things that need to be addressed, but for the past implementations that we've done and where we've used this, you could come into a month and have 1,000 shortages that need to be addressed. And if you have 1,000 to work with, which ones do you like possibly start with? I think using the different attributes and settings that we have here, we can very quickly narrow down which ones can't be avoided, orders need to be shifted out, versus which ones we should actually be actioning off of and be addressing as quickly as possible.
And that's really a great point for everything that we're going to show today. The visibility that Anaplan provides is helping you direct your attention to the things that are most at risk, or the things that you should fix first. So being able to attack that by looking at things that are below 70%, or as we go down here and looking at the product families. I know I need to attack all of my furniture orders first because that's where the most revenue impact is coming from. That's really what Anaplan is providing as it sits on top of this Snowflake allocation. So continuing on here through some of the tables, as I mentioned, we want to look into our furniture product family. So if I click on that, we can scoot over to the right and see the individual products that we do have at-risk orders for. So I'm going to focus on our Love Seat product, as we're in this fictional furniture company. So some things that we can do is we can actually check to show the components and the sales orders within this table. And then as we scroll down, we'll see some additional tables where we have all of the components required for that Love Seat, the shortages that we have in total, and then some comments, which we'll come back to in a second. We can also see the individual sales orders, what their clear to build percentage is, and some other metrics that are relevant. So one of the great parts of Anaplan is the collaboration aspect, and this is where we really introduce that that analysis of fixing problems over time, or being able to plan for the long-term health of the business. So some things that you can see here are these comments that have been made by different folks in our organization. So I want to focus on this bolts comment. This is a high priority component. It's obviously needed across many of our products that we're looking to get out the door here in the next 30 weeks based on our time horizon. So someone else has come in here as a sales planner and they've made this comment. This can be tracked throughout the next steps in our process. So what we will see on the next page is that the suppliers will be able to leverage these comments, know that they need to focus their attention here first, and move to submit some purchase orders to get those in our hands so that we can actually get our orders out the door. Additionally, I've seen some really cool things done with running reporting off of these comments, being able to flag problems that are recurring, and that's where you can gain the additional insight into the health of your business with Anaplan. We can run diagnostics on bolts are a frequently recurring thing that we're short on. Maybe we need to go and discuss with our supplier on either ordering more, ordering ahead of time, setting up some recurring orders, things like that. Joe, anything else to add on some of the collaboration or diagnostics that we can run on the things we're tracking here?
Now, let's jump over to the supplier side and then pretty quickly, and then I think we can jump over to scenario planning.
Great. So I'm going to go into our supplier view now, and what I want to preface here is this is just a different aggregation of the same data set. So before, where we were rolling up all of our components and their shortages to our product families to gain some insight that way, now we're rolling them up to our individual suppliers. So the functionality of this page works very similarly to the product family view. You'll see we've selected our Hanks Hardware supplier. We have 11 wrist orders at Hanks Hardware. We're showing all of the products that come from Hank, and this comment has shown up here again. So some of the reactions that our buyers could do within Anaplan directly is actually reach out to those suppliers. We can export the data that's necessary to submit those purchase orders, and again, input our own comments to communicate back to the sales planners. That's a little bit of an overview on what we can do to assess the long-term health. Now let's go into our scenario comparison, where we're actually going to leverage the power of Snowflake. So again, we get a high-level comparison, but if we jump into this scenario creation, there are some different assumptions that we can input to create these scenarios. And Joe, I know you got a few thoughts on the configuration of this. So why don't you jump in here?
Yeah, and as you mentioned with Snowflake, so the information that would be fed in on a daily, hourly, potentially real-time basis would be that actual pegging allocation information. So which raw materials are actually aligned to which specific orders, and then against the existing inventory that we have, how much is short, when will we be able to fulfill those particular orders, and any sort of prioritization within there. And so these settings can help with that prioritization and the way that the allocation is actually working. And for us, if we want to create scenarios, we can create and compare a scenario against the baseline for what we already have in plan, or we could adjust that comparison as well. So we don't just always have to compare against baseline. We can do it against a couple of these others that we have listed below as well. So as we bounce over actually to the allocation logic, both that and then the allocation assumptions, we have a few listed here. That list could be much longer based on the needs from the business and the logic that we would like to see and what should be prioritized on the business end. So we have order date. If we want to prioritize orders by instead of date, if we want to do it by margin or by revenue, or we want to do a combination of margin and date, for example, within particular time horizons, then we can adjust that pretty easily to be able to, again, fit the needs for what the biggest pain points are on the business end. And in terms of the actual allocation assumptions, as you go through and see the prioritizing time ranges, minimizing inventory, or potentially including like things like customer profile as well. We know that based on particular customers, if there are ones that we've struggled with from a fulfillment standpoint in the past, there may be some that we're trying to prioritize more so than others, not just based on customer size, but based on recent performance that we've had. And so Theo can walk through not only these different attributes and settings that we can adjust, but actually just dropping in new orders and showing how we can see the impact of that very easily with what a reallocation would look like. Are we able to fulfill it based on the time that they need, or do we need to push back for a later time?
Thanks, Joe. So yeah, I'll come back in here, and what we're going to walk through is a hypothetical scenario where we want to force an order for a specific customer into the current month, and then also look to get our orders in the next 3 months out the door, if possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sales order here in this table. I'm just going to add it to a log that will be sent back to Snowflake. So we can just enter our sales order code structure here. Just a spot there. And then also copy that as the name. And all of these fields here can be configured. What we're going to do is we're actually going to be selecting a similar sales order so that it can pull all of the metadata from an existing order. But if there are other things that you would want to customize, we could set those up here as well. So let's say we want to get this out the door by the end of January. This is going to be related to the current sales order that we have right now. So we can add that in, and that's where it will pull all the metadata. So once I click submit, that's going to add it to our sales order log over here. And then the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to be allocating based on order date. So prioritizing those orders in the next 3 months. Finally, what we do is we click run scenario allocation, and we're going to send this into our order date scenario because that's what we prioritized our allocation on. So what this is doing right now is it's sending all of these assumptions back to Snowflake, where all of those orders are sitting right now. Snowflake will run through that allocation again based on our current assumptions and send that data back into Anaplan. So now that we've received that data back, we can actually run down this page and do some comparisons between what our baseline originally was, what our new scenario looks like with that new order added, and then also compare it to some of our other scenarios that we have in the model right now. So what you'll see is after I clicked on this order date column here, our chart on the right updated. So some of the things I want to point out is we are now planning to fully realize our revenue in January, February, and March. Another insight that we can gain is by actually comparing these two directly. So what I see in this comparison here, when we click on our revenue comparison, is that our revenue increased in these first 3 months. And what it did actually is it pulled components from orders that were sitting out in May, and it assigned them to those orders over the next 3 months so that we can get those to 100% completion. Now to kind of wrap all of this up, there's the power that Snowflake provides is being able to quickly do different things with your current set of orders and and assign them to different scenarios, right? But we also walk through some of the long-term business analysis. Where do we need to make improvements in our overall process? And that's where Anaplan comes in and shines. Is it gives you that quick visibility into the lower areas of your business. So, Joe, anything else to say before we wrap it up here?
Yeah, thanks for the walkthrough. Again, I think this is mostly based around supply chain resiliency at a high level, and in terms of the detail with how we get there, we know that it only takes one component, one particular part, one particular supplier to really throw things off based on the criticality. And in terms of the spread of usage of that across sales orders, this gives you that visibility, and both helps with proactively identifying where there could be issues and actions to take, but also if there's something that's already happened, then what can we do to resolve it as quickly as possible? So please reach out with any questions to myself or to Theo, and we'd be happy to discuss more. Thanks.